Hey everyone, good morning, happy Thursday. Almost to the weekend. This will be my last stream for the week. I'm going to be traveling tomorrow. But hope everybody is doing well as we move forward into the weekend. Got a couple updates to share on Bitcoin. A lot of hype, I'm sure, in Bitcoin 2025 in Las Vegas. I imagine nobody watching this stream is there, but maybe so, actually, with the time change. It's only one in the morning. No problem. Let's take a look at some charts here. So refined this chart a little bit. We got world basic money versus Bitcoin. As you know, this is blending two of the topics that I've been studying for a long time now, as many other people have. But the key is finding the money supply that is apples to Bitcoin. Historical, we have gold and silver. All right, these are assets, and you can count them up. It doesn't matter if they're in a vault in the Perth Mint or if they're in a vault in the Federal Reserve or somewhere in Europe in the Bundesbank. There is somewhat of an accurate count of gold and silver around the world. There's a more accurate count of what they call fiat money or central bank money. But central bank money is a liability. So we have an immediate problem here in that gold and silver is it is an asset. Right? It's an asset first. It's something real and tangible, and you can hold it. Then we have unbacked fiat money, which is always a liability. And it doesn't matter if it's central bank money or commercial bank money. The way that banks account for this type of money, as they call it, when you build up those money supplies, M1, M2, M3, it's always a liability. But the core of the system liability is the monetary base. Okay, so you take the monetary base, which is a liability, and then you remove anything on the asset side of central banks, because central banks are really the only banks that hold gold anymore. And so make sure we don't double count all of our available gold and silver. We remove the government gold reserves and some Bitcoin reserves. Not too much at the moment, only 50 billion. But once we do this calculation, you'll get to a figure that basically includes all the core of the system money. Even though gold is not statutory anymore, it's not on the law of any nation's books, really. Switzerland was the last country to get off of gold in 2000. Good morning, Dat. Good morning, IS. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. So yeah, just updating this one. This is kind of the biggest one I've been working on for a while, but I haven't put all the full pieces together probably until today, until this one. So if you add those things up, gold, silver, and then you add the liability that is unbacked or not connected to any gold or silver that a central bank has, then you get to a number that is all-encompassing of core of system money. So that is something that Bitcoin really can compare to. All right, so it was about 11.5 trillion when Bitcoin started in December 2008. And now, this goes till April, it's about 42 trillion. I'm going to update the fiat monetary base next week. So that's coming, but it's probably will be even a little bit smaller than this amount because central banks are still pretty tight. Europe is easing a little bit, but the Fed is not. They are letting some repos run off their books, but they're not really easing. But you see that April's the last real data here, or estimated data, 42.5 trillion, and the trend is 44. So we're actually under trend. And then you just project out. All right. So as I've said many times, this is clearly an exponential trend line because it looks like a straight line on log scale. But if we know that Bitcoin is not an exponential trend, Bitcoin's a power trend. So if we put that on log scale, you're going to get this nice concave down line. Notice, by the way, I know the tooltip's always annoying, but notice how the fiat money and gold just kind of turns into a real straight line there when you put Bitcoin on log, because Bitcoin started out so small, $0.00 trillion market cap. It was very small, $1 million market cap or something at this point. Way smaller than the global financial system. And already after just 15 years, 1.87 trillion as of April. We're going to be over 2 trillion. This is the trend line in May. It's the estimate, but 2 trillion in, whoops. There we go. We're going to be 2.1 actual or something when we close the month here in 2 days. So in the last videos and when I was on What Bitcoin Did with Danny, I talked about this. You might recall that they hit 100%. They matched in 2038. It was about 2038. And now it's different. Okay. I said that this would be tweaked. I just didn't have the time to do it. But I did a very simple regression before where I was just running the trend line through only 180 data points. That is 180 months here. We're almost to 10,000 days of Bitcoin's life. So I just needed to do it more specifically, more scientifically, running it on days. Thanks, JJ. And Geo, this is good. I got to watch it. I didn't watch it. Peter Schiff put on a show. It is funny watching the Silver Grays trying to defend the Rock, but that's what they're going to do. But anyway, this takes us to a little bit more of a conservative number. And I told you it was going to be a little bit later. I wasn't sure. It's a couple years later than I thought even. So this black line is now very, let's say, more detailed, more precise. It's taking the power trend on the Bitcoin price, multiplying out by the expected coins that we know based on the block time and Bitcoins coming out every 10 minutes. Instead of just running a very sort of crude monthly regression on the trend line here, which I just did because it's all on the same chart, I refined it. So we go out, we push it out now when we meet, not to 2038, but to 2043, May. It's actually almost precisely 5 years later. And that's kind of interesting because the numbers we were talking about back in 2038 was that mythical 100 trillion, 110 trillion. Maybe it's 150 trillion when we'll finally meet it. I'll show you this is the real Bitcoin dominance now. So this is the actual here. April, 4.4% as of month close April. And then we get to 100% here, May 2043. Two things that can get this green line to fall or basically just to fall would be, one, central banks start reserving more Bitcoin. Okay, because again, we got to remove all the things that are, we can't overlap anything. So if we have to remove Bitcoin reserves, so if more Bitcoin is reserved in central banks, which is part of this green money, all their basic money, we need to only count the unbacked fiat money. So this green line would go lower. The second thing, of course, would be if gold lost power. So if Peter Schiff got even more hard done and more angry and more despondent, if his plans were ruined even more, the gold trend could fall. I don't necessarily see that. It's kind of is what it is. Comes out 1.8% per year, but it could go down a little bit more. And I guess the third thing is that Bitcoin, of course, could get on a better trend still. So as we know, I'll even just take this off. This trend here at the end of the decade, 8.3 trillion. This is probably a little bit low. Remember, that represents a price of something like $550,000, really by the end of 2030. Something like this. And now that have price action above this trend line, that pulls the trend line back up. So it's not a fixed number. It can never be, static, even though this is the best predictor I think that we have. That's the third option, of course, of how this Bitcoin dominance could get to 100% sooner, is, of course, if the Bitcoin trend starts to get pulled up more than it currently is. So 5 years further than I initially said. Maybe not 100 trillion, but 150 trillion. I don't know what you guys think. Again, it's impossible to project anything in the markets even a year ahead of time, other than just sort of having your baseline trends and seeing where you are. But another factor, of course, is before we get into this virtuous loop, which we're already in the virtuous loop, as we can see. Another factor is that probably, no one knows if it's 100%. Because remember, 100% on this chart does not mean that gold and fiat money and silver have gone away. It just means that they equal. It's really 50-50. It's 50-50 of the pie. So that's another thing to think about. Is it 50-50? Or maybe people start denominating in Bitcoin when the pie is 40-60, only 40% in Bitcoin's favor, somewhere, whatever that is, 80. I can't do numbers in my head like that, but should be divided by 2, right? So yeah, when this is 80%, it's really 40-60 is the split of the pie. Could be here when we're in Bitcoin standard territory. Hard to tell. I also think it's funny. I mean, again, this is my lens of living in Eastern Europe and being a little bit scared of how the U.S. might grow its soft power over the next few years. But it's Trump Jr., Vivek. There's a lot of MAGA type people now associating themselves with Bitcoin, which is fine. I'm not going to fight the tailwind at all. Obviously, Bitcoin is for everybody. I certainly prefer a Trump administration towards Bitcoin, at least the Bitcoin policy, not necessarily other policies, but the Bitcoin policy compared to, say, a Biden Gensler administration. But I still wonder if they're going to be a net benefit after 4 years of Trump. To me, the jury's out on that. I don't know what you guys think. Might just not matter. None of it matters, right? It's just the trend. At the end of the day, the trend is your friend. So this is true, though. The old gold bugs. Yeah, I don't understand that. I really don't. Geo says there are many traders to say this is the peak of the cycle. I mean, as far as the 4-year cycle goes, we obviously not on it. I mean, it's always at least one price top has occurred in the November, December, i.e., November, December months, i.e., a full year and a half after the previous having concluded, except for, of course, 2013, because that was the first epoch. But in it just leaves 2017 and 2021. But, there's so many signs that the pendulum would swing or should swing higher. So again, I was not using any of these curves. So here's the power trend on stock to flow. Here's it just on straight up market cap. And here's it. This is the one I'm using now in this chart. Okay. To project Bitcoin market cap, I'm using this one, which is the actual price on the power trend on the price itself, because price is the highest signal, multiplied out by the supply that we expect in the future. So there's where you get to your 2043, and it's somewhere around $150 trillion Bitcoin. I just realized I needed to put suffixes on the numbers there. These are billions. These are billions that you see in the tooltip. So that's why it's hard to do these charts every day. I mean, getting some things on the website, I know people want to see it, but it's 1,000 billion there. So 150,000 billion, i.e. 150 trillion is projected, which I think is that's the best projection. And versus if Bitcoin was on an exponential trend, which some people continue to still say, that's, I think I said quadrillion. That's not even quadrillion. That's over quadrillion. So what is 1,000 quadrillion? It's 51,000 quadrillion. I was saying quadrillion in one of the prior streams. It's not even that. It's 1,000 quadrillion. Does anybody know off the top of their hands how do you say 1,000 quadrillion? Because that's what an exponential trend would have to do, to get Bitcoin where it should be if it was an exponential asset by 2043. Yeah, some people think that could happen this cycle. Quintillion, thank you, sir. Quintillion. So if Bitcoin was an exponential asset, when I projected it will match other exponential monetary assets of about 150 trillion. If Bitcoin itself was exponential, i.e. a straight line on log scale, it would be 100. It would be 51 quintillion. And there's not even a quadrillion dollars of assets still in the world today, even 15 years after the global financial crisis. Ten to the power 30. There's no way any of that happens. Let's go back to price just to show you. Actually, I don't have price up. I got to pull it up. Here. Before I get to that, I want to show gold really quick. So gold doesn't change. Our buddies Peter Schiff, Frank Justra, they love it. It's a straight line. The growth rate is a straight line on log scale. Also, if you look at the percentage growth, that's a straight line. It's constant. So it's a straight line here on log. obviously, with like 100%, almost nearly 100% R squared, which is funny because I've been saying nothing is 100% R squared, but it rounds to 100. It's about 1.8% per year. That's the slope of the trend line. All right. I wanted to run through the numbers again for you on the gold's income, right? So if there's 5.9, all right. It's about $200 billion a year at the moment. It's not, that's a very crude number, but if you take 5.9 billion, milliard for our European friends, 5.9 milliard or billion times $3,300, current market price of gold, you'll get the gold cap of about 19 trillion. 19 trillion. 19.5 trillion. Okay. Multiply that by 0.018, and it's 350 billion. Got that? So that's a very high number. It's not that. I'm sure it's not that at the moment. If you looked at all the gold miners and put their revenue together, that's just new ounces that come out of the ground every year. It used to be. I remember even talking about this like a couple of years ago. With less than $2,000 an ounce gold, you would have like 120 billion. But now at $3,300 an ounce, gold miners are loving it. Peter Schiff's loving it, even though he's been wrong on Bitcoin. So that's a $350 billion industry. $350 billion industry. You could do the same with oil. Oil is well over $1 trillion in revenue. Bitcoin, as we're going to show here, look at the old price to sales ratio is market cap divided by miner revenue. So let's take off the market cap. Here's the market cap, 2.1 trillion. Let's take that off. This is the trailing 12-month Bitcoin miner revenue. We're not even back up to 15 billion. 15. So it's so small, so small. I presume you mean gold, and yes, that's the complete gold miner industry. Be a $350 billion industry. It's a very, it's like it's not that I took that from a report or anything. The only thing I took from a report is from World Gold Council, or there's CPM Group. There's a lot of people that do this. Is they take the new mining ounces that are estimated each year, and it is that value in gold ounces, and then you'd have to put it into dollar terms to get the dollar. So it's 100 million ounces, right? Is that right? 100 million ounces should be the number. $350 billion. There are other revenue streams in the gold industry, like they have like recycled gold, which is a big churn. They're mining gold that's like coming out of the dental industry or something in the secondary market and things like that. Those are not small quantities either. I'm not factoring any of that in. I'm just wondering, what is the new supply, inflation, if you will, or monetary issuance that gold miners bring into the market. And right now, on a trailing 12-month basis, again, it's less than 350 billion because the price has just gone up to 3,300 for gold, like in the last couple months, right? But it's still been elevated for the last 2 years now. So whatever, call it what you want, $300 billion, something like that. But the point that I'm trying to make, and where I think it's so huge for us following Bitcoin, is look at how small Bitcoin is. It's not even back to the top in January 2022 of 16.8 billion. It's still only about $13.4 billion trailing 12 month, which is nuts, because we had more Bitcoins coming out here, even at a lower price, than we have now at a higher price. I should run some trend lines on this itself, but I haven't. It would be interesting to see, right? But this is huge. If you just compare industries, and gold is a $200-300 billion industry, and new coins and new ounces of gold coming out. Bitcoin is only 15, it's 13. Obviously, you know, you don't have to change anything in the economics. You just have to have the price rise, and it will compete with other markets. So that's, again, where I think it's really exciting. I mean, I think it's amazing. Sorry, someone's calling me. So we have this. We have this number. We have the market cap. And what you get is this pretty enormous price to sales figure if you divide the market cap by that total revenue for the Bitcoin industry. And by the way, I'm sure miners are making more, and other, like, there's still miners trying to do merge mining, and you know, you can make money other ways in Bitcoin. Obviously, this is just kind of, you know, again, my science, like, academic calculation of what the Bitcoin mining revenue is. Of course, it's, no one knows what it exactly is at any one time. It's just the trailing 12 month of new Bitcoins plus fees that come out of the network. So anyway, it's a huge number when you do the multiple, and we're already going back to all-time highs of that multiple. But the thing is, this multiple tends to grow. Like, I don't think we've settled into any sort of equilibrium here. This multiple tends to grow because if you do bands on it, you can see here that it keeps extending. So if we put this on log scale, this itself is a power curve. And I think we're getting, you know, higher. But still not topping. You know, based on this chart, I got it to top here. And I got it to top here. And I got it to top here. It's not perfect, but I think it's a nice way to bridge the physical Bitcoin world with the digital FOMO world. I talked about this before, but we wanted to look at price again, right? So if we assume now that it's 2043, that is 100% Bitcoin dominance to fiat-based money, that's a $7 million price tag per Bitcoin. And it would be $782 billion if we were on an exponential trend. So it's just, again, I just don't see these numbers played out as much as plenty of people want them to play out that way. I feel like we're going to have more problems in the world than not if we had $782.8 billion dollar Bitcoin. to be on an exponential trend. What do you guys think? I'm also interested in, this is the next thing to project out is this figure. Take this off again. But this figure, the revenue, right? What will miners be making annually when the Bitcoin network is throwing off, $7 million coins? Because we're at 3.125, right, today per block. Obviously, I can't do math in my head, so it's going to be like 2, maybe, yeah, less. It'll be less than a Bitcoin a block. Be less than a Bitcoin a block. So then you do that. I mean, you just run that math, and however, I don't know. It's I'm curious where this number tops out to, right? Because there were a lot less coins even here in 2021 coming out per day than now. Now it's only 400 coins a day or something. Do you have to put a down payment on it yet? But yeah, I think this is the most precise I can get this, all things considered. I'm now looking at $150 trillion Bitcoin market cap, not 100. Obviously, when Bitcoin gets to 100 trillion, it's going to have the attention of the entire world, all economies, all industries, all speculators. There's another thing that's funny about Peter Schiff and Frank Giustra, and considering these numbers I just told you, right? So very basically, let's say gold is a $300 billion industry. Oil is over $1 trillion every year. Over $1 trillion of oil is sold into the market. Oil is not the best example because oil, obviously, it's a utility. I mean, it's a commodity, but it's something that we use it up. Gold, of course, we don't. Very small. Well, 50% of it has a jewelry, ornamental utility, but still, it sticks around. It doesn't get consumed. A smaller percentage does in the technology industry or the dental industry still, but and Saylor has made this point a lot too. Bitcoin is the only industry which has like an asset that people want to actually keep what they produce. They don't want to sell it for dollars. They want to keep it and speculate on some of it because they just see where the winds are going. So gold doesn't have that as much as, and this is another thing I think about of all the newsletters that I've read over the years and why I think just some of them are so scammy, is like everybody is saying and has been saying for 20 years, 80, depending on the gold bug that you're talking about, how old they are. I mean, they could have been saying this since 1971, is that the system is going to collapse. It can't hold itself up. Everything is bad. United States is terrible. And gold is going to the moon. Well, if that trend is true, at what point are miners going to start holding gold? And I still haven't, to my knowledge, there's no gold miners that hodl gold ounces. They want to sell those things for dollars as quick as they can. Sure, they have costs in dollars or euros or whatever, but only Bitcoin is a market where people want to put it on the balance sheet. You don't want to put gold ounces on the balance sheet. And that's really interesting because even during the gold standard, to my knowledge, someone can correct me, but even during the gold standard, if you were a gold miner, you were still mining gold and selling it for fiat. Even back in like the 30s or the 20s or the 1800s, it wasn't something that, as a miner, you would dig it out of the ground and then keep it on your balance sheet. So that's something that's totally different with Bitcoin. Yes, we're only 15 years into this experiment, but this is, this, in my opinion, that behavior is large players, large decision makers saying, we see the writing on the wall. We're going to start calculating this stuff in Bitcoin soon worldwide, so we're going to keep some Bitcoin on our books. Yeah. It's a very difficult industry. I've talked to friends in the United States that are like engineers and they're building rigs and mining farms. And I don't necessarily know about the AI yet. I'm sure obviously that's coming and everybody's learning. But it's a world. Investors are coming from everywhere, as far as I understand. Like, it's another thing that will make Trump happy. At least is the U.S. is open for business for mining Bitcoin, and there are investors from all around the world coming into the United States to mine Bitcoin. I still think that this has a very, going back to the old arguments we used to have about ASIC boost or Bitcoin mining in China. And obviously, a lot of those arguments were put to rest when China completely banned Bitcoin in 2021, was it? Or is it 2020 even? And of course, that was like after 5 previous bans, like semi-bans. It's still semi-banned, obviously, but that was like kind of the hardcore one in 2020. And miners, the Bitcoin mining industry had no problem relocating to North America and back to South America again, or the Arctic or Northern Europe. But I'm not a huge fan of like Bitcoin reserves, right? I mean, that's the interesting thing will be how, once we get to a Bitcoin standard, is how much governments hold Bitcoin in reserve, A, relative to the fiat money they print, because that's continuing. I'm sure that's continuing for a long time. Or B, relative to the total amount of Bitcoin. And it's pretty low right now, right? It's only 50 billion. This number is about $50 billion, 500,000 coins at the moment. So it's not very big. But governments are the only entities in the world that have the ability to influence purchases of Bitcoin that much. I don't know. I'm kind of cool to the idea still because I don't think you need to have Bitcoin in a government vault to make it legitimate. It already is legitimate. It's just a question of, there's only risks really in the long term of what a government could try to do to the network. So, but whatever, I can't control that. So, Geo says, let me ask a critical question of if you're wrong about your statements about Bitcoin, you find out years from now that you were wrong. What would that look like? What would be the things that would make you realize you were wrong? Well, the two things that I've been saying are on this chart, right? First, the Bitcoin compares to this money. So I could be wrong two ways here. I could be wrong in that Bitcoin, I could be wrong in a good way, where the Bitcoin way overshoots this value and goes up to like 100 trillion by next year and is already competing with all checks and debit cards and Venmo and all credit-based money, which is not included in this number. So that would be great for all of us if I was wrong about that. Of course, I could be wrong on the bad side that Bitcoin just fails and doesn't connect. I could also be wrong that this is not actually a power curve, although I really find this hard to believe. And somehow, these, like, it's possible that one could say that this data was too thin here. If you marked it here, maybe it would only be exponential, right? If you only look from this data after whatever, 2017. I think that doesn't matter, though. I think that's not a correct statement, because if you look at other things like hash rate, address growth, nodes, they all seem to exhibit the same power relationships. But to be wrong, it could be a, something like here. Obviously, you can imagine drawing a straight line through here, not a concave line. So those, I guess, would be the ways that I would say that would allow me to say, yeah, I definitely was wrong. This seems impossible, though. Like, does this not seem impossible? I mean, look at it's just silly, the prices. And now, again, you could say, oh, well, this is the wrong curve. That's true. Like, I could, again, if you go to 2017 and you draw an exponential trend, it's going to look different. Obviously, if we only take this data, then this curve is going to be way shallower. It's going to be way less steep. The reason this green line is as steep as it is because we go way back to cheap prices in 2010. So you could say, well, prior to 2017 is just not accurate data. I haven't really done it, to be honest. I haven't taken different sensitivities. It's another thing I could do, I guess. I don't know. It's too strong. It's like Sminston says. His name is Sminston. Sminston on Twitter, he's like, this is the line that you can't unsee, is when you go log log. So when you go log log, power curves become straight lines. This curve, this is log linear, but log log, power curves become straight lines. And this as well seems just awesome to me. Yes, the future is digital, digital intelligence, digital engineering, digital capital. Bitcoin isn't going up long term. That's all I know. If it goes to zero, then we have broader existential threats. Yeah, completely agree with that sentiment. Completely agree. And it's like the quantum discussion, right? If something really, if a quantum computer or a quantum uh, some new form of quantum encryption breaking uh, capability existed, it's not just going to target Bitcoin. It could target China's infrastructure, the United States' infrastructure, Iran's infrastructure, by any actor. So uh, it's not just Bitcoin that they're going to worry about. Of course, it is an argument to make sure Bitcoin has a steadfast, safe development, because when Bitcoin does get to 100 trillion, then like that would scare more people. But at least as of right now, we're still, at least as of right now, it's still like, if this thing all went to bust, I would still have fun doing it and participating and watching it. Yeah, so that's another thing I wanted to do eventually was, and by competitor, I presume you mean another blockchain, or maybe you mean another digital money that comes out of nowhere that doesn't use, you know, the blockchain tech as Satoshi came up with it. It's possible. It's always possible. So I guess now this is the chart I wanted to show. Like theoretically, we can look at not stable coins, because stable coins are just backed treasuries, which is not money at all. But, you know, theoretically, like you can look at Ethereum or Sol and throw that in there. I haven't studied the curves of those networks as much, but they don't fit as well as Bitcoin's does, as Bitcoin's fit. Yeah. It's funny too if you think about, you know, I know everybody starts in different times here, right? But like I was really starting a journey right around here. I was moving up really in 2013 again. You know, if I missed this bubble, but this journey right here, and you know, all of after that top, there was just so many articles like Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin is dead, Bitcoin is dead, and then all of a sudden coming back is like blockchain is good, blockchain not Bitcoin, blockchain, 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 and ICOs and DeFi. Um, so far, none of these arguments have held a candle to the idea of just having a digital, a decentralized, you know, base money around the world. But I suppose there could be a competitor that could dethrone Bitcoin there. Another one I need to show and I need to update is we can track the volume of Fed funds. And when we say Fed funds, that is that what they call the bank reserves in the United States, and other countries have them too. I don't have as much detail there, but you know, if we just look at the United States, that's like $5 trillion monetary base, 5.5 trillion. So Bitcoin itself is already 40% of that, which is interesting. But that's huge volume. That is a quadrillion dollars of velocity of cycling through that same money in the course of a year. It's huge, huge volume. Bitcoin does not do that. It does. I don't even know what it does. It's got to be like a couple trillion now in dollars a year. But if you would look at the penetration of Bitcoin's velocity or volume of transactions in the course of a year versus the Fed, it's still like way different. Like you'd have to look at it on log scale, but it's come way down or way up. It's really getting close, or at least the trend is clear that it's catching up. And for that to catch up, Bitcoin doesn't need to do anything. All the Bitcoin needs to do is increase its price, because it can be the same amount of coins that transact a day, same amount of transactions even, but when you have higher value of those coins going through, and obviously it's not about dollars per transaction, it's about satoshis per byte. So it has nothing to do with I mean, of course, it does have to do with the amount of transactions, but that's not the governor, or the price per transaction. That's not the governor. It's more about satoshis per byte, which is just completely disconnected from the dollar price. So you can have, that's a chart I need to update too. You can have a really zooming trajectory there against the Fed, and it is. So all those things show me that we're on the right track as far as the asset to follow. There's not like Ripple is nowhere close to that. People say that they've thrown out all these arguments through the years, right? That it's going to be Ripple or it's going to be Ethereum. At the end of the day, all those guys have to shift their point of view to be relevant. I think even Hoskinson did this with ADA. When he first came out, he was coming out as the scientist, the data scientist. He was talking about how, we need to start doing research papers. We need to have all these, scientists researching down to the byte, down to the second, analyzing how we can make a more efficient, faster, better blockchain. And that was like the story of ADA, that it was the scientific blockchain. And then he started to just say that Bitcoin's irrelevant and Bitcoin is antiquated software and it can't be updated and it has problems. And then, and this is like a year ago, I don't know, he started to talk about how it's going to be better to build on Bitcoin. So there's a complete 180. The complete opposite of how they start talking about Bitcoin is usually how they finish talking about Bitcoin. That's funny too. As I do, I'm going to switch quickly. I just wanted to reiterate this. If we have any Germans watching, I'm keen to hear, but this was pretty cool. This was Merz last week, ushering in the first, full-time brigade in Lithuania. Yes, it's only 5,000 troops. It's not a lot, and these are tripwire troops still for the Baltics. But it's amazing to me to think how, I mean, I like Merz. We're so lucky to have Merz, in my view, from where we are, because, to have the Germans, we want the Germans to come in now compared to, 80 years ago. It was quite a different story. And whatever happens to the Trump or the administration or the Americans, it's totally rational that, good allies and democratic partners can work together in Europe, and I hope that they do. Again, this is nothing but positive views from our side. I mean, if Germany is going to help finance and even build long-range missiles that Ukraine themselves, like in the name of Ukraine is doing it, but of course they're going to have more German engineering, German financing. It's just nothing but incredible, and it took long enough with Schultz. I mean, this took 3 years too long, and I would say the same thing about anything Biden did. But I'm very, very happy with just to see Merz's posture. It's a strong leader, and it's democratic, in my view. I'm sure, as we're in Bitcoin, a lot of people hate the government anyway, and there may be people watching this that disagree. But to my German friends, I'm at least glad to see where Germany stands. I know it's tough days, and it's not going to be easy. Here's another thing where, as I have always talked about, like, this is probably the main chart. And sorry, I'll go away while this draws. Not this chart, but here we go. This is still the United States, but from everything they did during COVID, like it's pretty hard to not look at this little hump here, regardless of what the markets are doing. But it's pretty hard to see that this is not a change in trend, right? I mean, this is a trend. But here, it's going to be harder for everybody. I mean, things are going to be more expensive, and it's going to actually, we're going to have to rely on nations like Germany that don't have a lot of debt, that are, have been preparing for a rainy day, so to speak, to kind of keep peace up in the world. This is going to be really hard for Americans to keep going. I think rates are staying the same or going higher. I don't, doesn't mean they have to go back up for 20 years or 30 years up to here. But, there's a lot of debt in the system. Thank you, Anders. Yeah, I think usually when I'm streaming here European time, everybody's pretty much on board, and I like to see it. Thank you, Sandro. Too little, too late has been the theme of this. I hope the chance will be less talk and more action. Completely agree. I mean, it's not about like warmongering, and everybody always in the United States, maybe rightly so. They're always worried about. They're always touting whataboutism, saying, "Well, what about Iraq? What about Afghanistan?" And to which I would just say, yes. I mean, it was a disaster to go into for 20 years into Afghanistan and Iraq, and to invade sovereign territory. I mean, Afghanistan was always going to be one thing. That still was a failure, but to give up on allies that were there, people that were helping the United States, and sure, the Brits and the Americans going in with nobody else at the UN by their side, was not the way that the world should have responded to 9/11. But that does not justify what's happening now. And the good thing is just how backwards and corrupt and just terrible the Russian elite is. There's no way that they can sustain a full war against NATO. But of course, we don't want to be collateral damage. And that's what I worry most about Russian disinformation that's leaking into the United States. Is I think it's already clear the United States is stepping away. They're going to step away. I hope Trump doesn't go to the point where he actually wants to help his buddy, or he actually, like it was even argued or theorized by some Ukrainians that back in February, March, when the intel, the satellites were turned off for Ukrainians, like for a couple days, that they even, I mean, I'm not the one saying this, but it was arguments that was even, let's just say, favorable to the Russians in pushing Ukrainians out of Kursk, where they, the Russian territory that the Ukrainians, I think, brilliantly did an offensive on for a buffer zone. There's been arguments about how, how bad that was for the Ukrainians. Perhaps even the Americans were, let's say, not on their side at that point. That jars me as an American European. That like shakes me to my core. But that administration, it's not the right word. That regime in Moscow is nothing. They want peace of no kind. They just want to keep taking over. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah, it's great. I just love to see this. Yeah. Whole warmongering thing triggers me. It's a Russian narrative. It's like your neighbor yelling warmongering when you try to kick out an intruder during a home invasion. It's just totally natural. Yeah, I mean, Denmark has been incredible. I think Denmark is number one as far as donations to Ukraine per capita, and the Baltics are like 2, 3, and 4. I need to update this chart. We're getting close to 1 million casualties. Russian. Of course, this is according to the Ukrainian MOD. But yeah, I just it would jar me like to my core if somehow after all this stuff, the United States, even if they walk away, that's one thing, but to walk away and continue to, belittle the Ukrainians and Zelensky is just, I can't imagine they do that. And they might. This is through February, not through March, but through February. So it wasn't 300, 400 billion that the United States had given. It was 114 billion euros, 137 billion euros for Europe. Europe was always ahead. Here was that big Trump delay in Congress. This is as of 10 days ago. I got to update this, but sorry. Geo, I feel like that stoic statement certainly leads to ruin. I think it's antithesis to progress often. This might be the... What do you mean? The least European of me? I think, like, what's going to go wrong? Yeah, I mean, this is what he's signaling. He's signaling he wants to do deals with Russia over Ukraine. I just don't think he really cares about Ukraine. If anything, he has animosity still towards Zelensky because of the old impeachment problem during his first term. I'm going to talk with a journalist. His name is Joseph Lindsley. Joe Lindsley. You can find him on Jonathan Fink's channel, Professor Gertis's channel. I really like what he's been saying. I mean, as an American, he lives in Ukraine now, he's working journalist, but he's been saying, it's one thing to say, okay, you want to lighten up, support America, if that's what you want to do, and if Europe needs to do more, fine. But again, I'm still coming this from my American side here. There are ways to reach out across the aisle to MAGA types. Okay, there might be a 10% or a 5% of Tucker Carlson type that is just completely gone. You're never going to get to them. But no matter how much anybody might hate the government or want to be an anarcho-capitalist, still politics is controlled from the center. So if you want to be from the center right, I think there are plenty of ways that you can say that, look, the Republicans have opportunities here to reestablish, to fix the problems from 20 years ago and the failed invasions or whatever, however you might want to define what happened there in the Middle East. And it just does not mean negating sovereign territory for an aggressor. Like, Europe has already been through this 80 years ago. It's already been through it. Yeah, so this is, let me find the websites and I'll show you. The underlying infrastructure is node.js. Which is like JavaScript, but then there's also some other stuff. And then, hold on. So it's two things. The data is pulled in through spreadsheets that I have on Google. It's not very fancy. It's also not very private, right? Google, it's maybe secure, but not private. So it's node.js, and then the app is npm, open source. And the charts themselves, again, I'm not a coder, so I had people help me. I do use ChatGPT to to help me like correct things now, but I didn't build it. The charts themselves are high charts. So these are the three pieces on top of using Google Sheets. So it's kind of a complicated thing. It's maybe wonky. Other people might want to do different things, but these charts are high charts. So it's just the same. Anybody can pull these templates. Of course, if you do, like, if you're going to sell this stuff, you'd have to pay for it or something. I think you can get it for free, no problem. The app that runs it is npm, and you need JavaScript. You need this node.js to pull in the numbers and stuff to the app. Thank you. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, it's very sad. There are these characters that are really popular now on the right. Like Dave Smith is one. Scott Horton, this Benny Johnson fellow, Dave Rubin, even Russell Brand. And they're all kind of around the Joe Rogan orbit. Daryl Cooper is another one. They're trying to throw in this sort of narrative that somehow we need to rethink World War II and Churchill was probably pretty bad, which it's unfathomable to me. I think it's certainly for clicks, and it's to make people seem, to get people triggered. Yeah, this is the key point. This is the key point. I try to keep telling people this, like, there is no freedom in Russia. All of the people that I just mentioned, they're, whether they're like full on anarcho capitalists who believe that they're really principled, like Dave Smith, who reads Mises. I've read the same stuff that he does. I know exactly where he's coming from. Or you're maybe just kind of a traditional Republican type or kind of wonky like Russell Brand or Joe Rogan for that matter. I don't think Joe Rogan's necessarily versed on a lot of this like real hardcore libertarian philosophy, but he's a don't tread on me type of a person, which is fine. You have no idea about Russia. You have no idea about how, the flame of liberty has never burned really once in, Russia or the Soviet Union or the Tsarist times. It's just such a false equivalent to try to say that, oh, well, America did bad things 20 years ago. Now we should sort of forgive what Russia's doing. And it's incredible. If you go on, Lou Rockwell is another website. Again, feel free to enlighten me if you guys have other ideas on Europeans here. But like, if you go on this website, I've met these guys. I've gone to some Mises events. I had this a mayor of Lithuania, of Vilnius, Remigijus Šimašius on. Again, this is just a sort of We Hate America website, which is fine. They have their, but like just a very, I'm just finding this right now. I had a headline: recycling old news media push for more war in Ukraine. Like, America is not going to war in Ukraine, and they're definitely not going to send troops. This is probably going to be pro Russia. I mean, he definitely does have lack of critical thinking skills, but this is not going to be pro Ukraine. I'm sure of that. So anyway, it's these type of websites that um, they're ready to claim that they're just pristine and have so much justice, but just look at the country that you're defending. There's no private property in Russia. There's no rule of law. There's no courts. Everything is under the literally the Caesar, the czar, and everything is taken over. It's just rubber stamping. Congress has just rubber stamped everything. Sorry, the Duma in Moscow has rubber stamped everything. Yeah. And I will say on the one, I appreciate you guys listening to me. I kind of need to vent on it sometimes because we are nervous and we're super happy when there's support for us like this. Uh, but it's probably even better to not waste your time with a lot of that. Like I used to read this website more often 10 years ago before the invasion of Crimea. I was more thinking about these things, and then once Crimea was taken, that just changed everything for me. Like to think about, it was like stuff that my father would tell me about growing up, or um, it's like the old days were back again. And so, this is just a website where they have their views and they're going to be anti-America no matter what. But it's sort of the guise of anti-state or anti-war. And again, you have a country that's literally defending its own territory, and they will look for any excuse they can to not have that happen. And I've said this so many times, but there is nothing more American than getting help from your allies in your fight for independence. Like it's just, if we did not have France and Spain and Holland helping us, when I say we as an American revolutionary force, it's highly likely that America might be more like Canada today, or I don't know, whatever. I don't know what would have happened, but it's highly likely that a true independence push would not have happened. It's just not historical. And obviously Europe, we have all of our own histories and what as well, and um, you know, everybody's proud of their history. Russians can be proud of their history too. I just don't understand why they can't go and fix their own, you know, economies rather than having to just rape and pillage Ukrainians. I'll show you one of the things I wanted to do more on this show, and I would like you guys to tell me as well, because I like sharing people that I follow. This is a little old one, but like, this is Tomas Ilves. He is a former president of Estonia. He's American. He um, he's like an old coder. In the 90s, he was one of the instrumental people in bringing this digital identity to Estonia. And he's just so hardcore. I mean, this is kind of an older tweet, but he said this from the beginning, and I just love it that this is a president of a country that says this. First, they need to steal more toilets from Ukraine. Like, this was actually happening. Toilets and washing machines were being stolen from this liberating force from Ukraine 3 years ago. Like, why doesn't Tucker Carlson talk more about this? I really wish, that he did. Yeah. I mean, maybe you guys could tell me the what you think the reasons are. It's probably many. Obviously, the Nordics, the Scandics. You know, you had the Great Northern War, and Russia was the underdog there. They came out with more power and more land, including uh, Baltic land, unfortunately. But I don't know. They cling to these things, and you know, it's like they say that they defeated the Nazis. Well, you also were allied with the Nazis for the first 2 years. 2 years, you invaded the Baltics and Poland together. Held a parade in Poland after dismembering it in September 1939. There's not many great things to hold back to that, to hollow back to those days. I do love this too. Have you guys seen this Taco Trump? Trump always chickens out. That's the new Wall Street bet. It's a good one. We don't have to start going through my Twitter feed together, but this is pretty good. Anyway, I know you guys are here for the charts. But yeah, I would recommend him as a follow. Ilves, Tomas Ilves. He's really, really good. He's really, really straightforward and clear. And he's old now, and he's getting by. But he's not going to let Estonia fall under his watch. And of course, it's not just him; it's everybody. I just wish we had America on our side. I saw Trump was asked by a reporter. He was very frustrated that a reporter talked about how he's chickening out on the tariffs, and it's not just the tariffs. I mean, it's it's everything with Putin. It's always a backtrack. There can be 300, 400 shahheads a night thrown at Ukraine, and he will say, Vladimir, stop, but he won't do anything about it. So Europe's going to have to do it. That's why I'm so pleased that Germany has elected Merz. It's great. It's just in my mind, it's a great sign for Europe to just be strong and normal again. Yeah, Landsberg is really great. I would love to get him on the show. He's staunch, steadfast in his views. I have seen this on Twitter. I'm sorry. I have to keep pointing the facts out. I just report them as they are from the WHO. It's either 1 in 5 or 2 in 5. But statistically, does not have a plumbing in Russia. So again, I mean, this is just they're living off the legacy of the Soviet Union like it's something good to live off of. And then when they don't increase their GDP per capita, as we talked about in the last 30 years, they just blame it on the US. And then all the ogres in America, like Tucker Carlson, are like, oh, yeah, it is the US's fault. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson was one of the biggest cheerleaders of the Iraq War 20 years ago. One of the biggest. But now he's reformed peacekrieger. Blitz peace. I like the blitz peace term that America's trying to put on Ukraine. This is a blitz peace or a peace krieg. Who is you here? You mean Americans? I hope so. This is another challenging thing for Europeans. Is really no European wants to fight, including myself. I'm not gonna lie about that. I would not like to have to take up arms if it comes. Europe has been in a privileged position the last 20 years. This is a good book. Again, I think I've mentioned this book. It was probably one of the first political books I read. Here. This is Bob Kagan from 2007. I thought this was like 2003, actually. I don't confused now. Maybe it's a second version. Yeah, something was published in 2004. Maybe this is a hardcover or something. But Of Paradise and Power, America and Europe and the New World Order. You know, can't say I agree with all of this guy's policies because he's, he was one of the architects of this project of a new American century, which is one of the things that conspiracy theorists latch onto and about America. But Project for a New American Century, he authored that with Bill Kristol. But his analysis is sound. Europe was sort of allowed to live in a kind of a peaceful paradise while America took up the role as the global policeman. And on the one hand, that did allow Europeans to have, nice vacations every summer and work hard on engineering and service industry. But if anybody was wondering how this story ends, I think we have it. Like, the story is now ending. So, and thank goodness that Germany is taking up the mantle again. And as ironic or whatever as that might be, I think it's fantastic for Germany and for Europe. But I would recommend this book. Actually, it's a nice portrayal of what was going on 20 years ago. When America was in full military mode. I'm not saying it was good that they were in full military mode, but it paints the picture. Yeah, this is problem. It's a problem. I read that it was something like, if you looked at the young vote in Germany, is it true that like half were for that liberal party, which was also a Kremlin party, but the not liberal, but the far left party that kind of came up, like they were getting money from the Kremlin, and also AfD. It was something like half of the German youth vote. I can look that up, but that seemed. Just Al Jazeera. There we go. There's a headline from February. Left 8.7. Oh yeah, Die Linke, right? So Die Linke has 25% of 18 to 24-year-olds, and AfD 21. So that's 46%. How do you guys feel about that? Yes, Ukraine is still under martial law, and that is their constitution. And once you go under martial law, you don't have elections because it's too dangerous. And that was questioned by the Trump administration, again, in the eyes of democracy, let's say. And the Rada, which is the parliament of Ukraine, voted something like 300-0 to keep martial law and not have elections, because that's what the Constitution says. It's constitutionally correct. Yeah, this is what I'm afraid of as well. No, I mean, I am. They're going to probe here. It's already. I'm already 100% sure that they're going to probe in my neighborhood. The question is just how much they probe. Is it going to be in Narva? Is it going to be in Vilnius in Lithuania? Is it going to be in Latvia? We have this town Daugavpils, which is very Russian on the border. And again, these Russians live the Russian minority. We say they're Latvian citizens or Estonian citizens. They live 100 times better than across the border. But it's just like Hitler made the claim that he was trying to defend persecuted Germans when he went into the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. That's the same thing that they'll do, that they'll try to do. If I were in charge, I would promise the Chinese Siberia. Well, I mean, this is the whole thing. Like, there's still border disputes between China and Russia, and God only knows how that's going to come out. Yes, it's in the Constitution. Thank you, IS. Have a great day. Thanks for the comments. But yeah, I don't know what you guys think about this, if it's really that bad or not. It's hard to change the view. Like if you're in this sort of vortex, whether it's on the hard left or the hard right, trust me, I know that it's hard to change views. Like for me, I was pretty much everything anti-government until 2014, and I was like, whoa, this is actually like why we still have governments and we have defense and militaries is what happened to Ukraine. It's definitely a battle. I think, like Anders said, it's a battle. It's very tenuous, and it's also very like in my opinion, if you could graph the uncertainty it is in. Where's the damn chart? It's this chart. Yes, this is America, but if it's going to be the same. It's going to be elevated for Germany and for France. Poor Macron. Poor Macron getting hit by his wife, who Candace Owens thinks is a man. It's going to get difficult. Here's one from Christopher. I'm not sure if it was declared by the president and then ratified by the parliament, but it's not been a process that has been constitutionally incorrect by any means for Ukraine. It could have been declared by Zelensky when it started, and then later, the parliament was still acting. It could have been ratified by the parliament. But that's not an issue at all. That's a zero. There's zero problem there. I personally wonder what the U.S. might do during the midterm elections because, again, this is a stretch. This is the United States has always had elections, even during wars, even during the Civil War. But the United States, Lincoln did suspend habeas corpus, which now this Stephen Miller fella has been saying they've been looking into doing in the United States. And I just can't think of anything less American than suspending habeas corpus. Uh, the Congress would need to ratify that as well. If they do, it's a Republican-controlled Congress. But there are plenty of people that are wondering if the U.S. might even have an election in the fall of 2026. I know that sounds drastic, but there's a lot of disinformation out there, and well, thanks for asking the questions. Uh, well, it might have been Bush, was it not? And I think it was in the context of Guantanamo, and I think probably correct. I don't know the details of how they've said that, but um, if I recall, this was American captured terrorists on foreign soil being brought to Guantanamo, which obviously is terrible. It's just like a terrible legal stuff anyway to consider. And I'm certainly not defending any of the Guantanamo stuff, but yeah, things continue to get more dicey in the name of national security, no matter what the situation. No question. It was Bush. It was Bush. And I don't know. I'm trying to do some AI stuff now to tell me the outcome of that, but um, with Lincoln, it was just northern newspapers weren't allowed to report the facts on northern soil, like on American soil. With Bush, it's it was foreign terrorist designations on foreign soil brought into Guantanamo, which is not what's foreign soil too. It's terrible. I mean, it's not due process for sure. Um, but it's the same thing like what's happening with El Salvador. I mean, that's even on American soil taking prisoners to El Salvador, so that's obviously dicey as well. Yeah, yeah, this is great. I mean, gold should go up about 10x. It's only a few billion, or I can't remember. There should be about $800 billion worth of gold on the Fed's balance sheet as an asset, as we talked about at the beginning of the video, but they only have it marked down uh, to 80, right? Yeah, so it should be roughly, let's say 30 divided by 3,000, it's 0.1, right? Times 80. 80,000. So that would be a wild thing if they repriced gold. If they repriced gold and then took that gold and bought Bitcoin. And that's the whole question um, about gold. Is some people say it's not even in the United States. If you want to research that more, you can look at GATA. These guys are hardcore. They do have some pretty interesting articles. These guys are super hardcore. Uh, the goldest of gold bugs that you can find. But if you go to documentation and there's some pretty interesting, some pretty interesting articles here, and then they will cite, they talk about like how the Nazis were repricing gold and using it for their currency manipulation during World War II. They talk about how the IMF wanted to start putting gold on all the central bank's books as two line items. One was gold certificates, all right, which is kind of like you lease the gold out. You really don't have the gold, but you expect to get the gold back from like a swap or something, versus actual gold in the vault. So gold certificates and gold in the vault. And the United States, I guess, overrode that process. So the United States only has one line item for gold. It's either called gold, or it might even be called gold certificates, but it's not exactly the most transparent thing. And the fact that no one can audit Fort Knox is like kind of hilarious as a democratic country. It certainly gets the gets the conspiracies going. This is why Bitcoin's so much better. It's like you don't even have to worry about it. Here we go. This is a new article. Warning about gold derivatives. European Central Bank suddenly sounds like GATA 25 years ago. So maybe the European Central Bank is even worried about, whatever. I don't have time to read this article on the fly, and I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me drone on about that. But these guys really have some hardcore articles about how much gold there might actually be in central banks. Let me know if you guys have any good books on the current war, by the way. I've been trying to research kind of like 70s, 80s type books, because there was a lot of overlap with the Soviet Union now, and the Soviet Union is still doing, or Russia, I should say, is doing what the Soviet Union still has always done, basically. And so I'm trying to get a little bit more insight into that. And this is a good book that just came out. It's called Zbig and Brzezinski. He's kind of like the Polish competitor of Henry Kissinger. And it's a pretty good book. Talks about, everybody's trying to talk about this pivot to Asia, and how Henry Kissinger did this sort of diplomatic marvel when he went in the last days of Mao and peeled away the Chinese relationship from the Soviet Union, right? And they're trying to make that comparison with what Trump is trying to do with Putin. And I think for a lot of reasons, that is not an accurate comparison. I mean, China is the main funder of Russia at the moment. They're the main supplier of kit and weapons and shells, along with North Korea. But there's just no way that they're peeling away from them. It's a completely different situation. They're both like friendly autocrats loving to control their territory. So I don't see any of this art of the deal stuff, or that's going on there. But anyway, a book like that, which looks at Zbig and Brzezinski, he came after Kissinger. A much less well-known and, or not, I guess, less famous administration was the Jimmy Carter administration. But it's pretty interesting, because Brzezinski is always like, he's Polish, and he was a major supporter of a free Poland during that time. And so just trying to read a little bit more history books that are covering that epoch. Anyway, guys, I think it's maybe enough here. I do think this is the main picture. Markets going back up, but rates are still staying elevated, much to Besant's dismay. And I think that we're in just a completely different territory. And it's much more like Anders says here. This is going to be a tough path. I don't think it's going to be anything easy about this, no matter where the U.S. sort of settles into in their foreign policy. So I thank you guys for letting me, it's cathartic even to speak to you guys on a stream here. It just helps me sort of keep my head straight when we think about the news overload. And certainly our life in the Baltics is much better than the average Ukrainian's life at the moment, but you keep supporting them as well. So, all right. I'm not in tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. I'll check in next week and hope everybody has a great Friday and a great weekend. Take care, guys. Thanks.